So the last few years have been a lot. The Trump presidency, two impeachments, a global pandemic, an insurrection on our nation's capital. It's not just you. We all feel the same way. A recent study from the University of Nebraska revealed that an estimated 40% of Americans consistently identify politics as a significant source of stress in their lives. That is more than 100 million people in this country, and that is deeply troubling. And it's not confined to one party. Tonight, immediately after our show, MSNBC Films is premiering the documentary film Love and the Constitution. It's the story of Congressman Jamie Raskin and the nation suffering through unimaginable trauma. Joining me now to discuss this is Michelle Goldberg, a New York Times columnist and an MSNBC political analyst, Michael Steele, the former chairman of the Republican National Committee and also an MSNBC political analyst, and Dr. Jeffrey Gardier, a board-certified clinical psychologist and an associate professor at Touro College of Osteopathic Medicine. It's great to have the three of you with us. Michael, let me start with you. I want to play a bit from the film. In this clip, Congressman Raskin recounts the devastation caused by the pandemic, including the effects on his son, Tommy, who had been a student at Harvard Law School at the time. Watch.
COVID-19 was a catastrophe for our country. The economic consequences of it were calamitous. We ended up losing hundreds of thousands of people.
We have 82,000 of our fellow citizens who have died already. We have tens of millions who've been thrown out of work. We have seen massive shutdowns.
Harvard Law School closed physically, and Tommy came back to live with us. He was on Zoom doing his classes. It's a very strange, isolating time.
Tragically, Tommy died by suicide at the end of 2020, only days before Congressman Raskin was tapped to lead the impeachment trial against Donald Trump. We all know that story. Michael, back to you. How does one even begin to cope with the trauma of losing a child and an insurrection in tandem?
It's hard. It's hard as hell. And I've gotten to know Jamie over the years through our political battles and our alliances. And it's a real pleasure to work with him now in the democracy space and appreciate the leadership that he's bringing to this. But at the same time, he paid a price. That isolation for his son was devastating. And his son is one of hundreds of thousands who carried that burden and tried to cope with it and live with it. And it speaks a lot to how that aspect of COVID is something that is often lost on leadership. People get caught up, Ayman, in the numbers. What percentage of that, how much of this, we're not doing enough of X, Y, and Z. But behind all those numbers are real people. And when you get into a situation where it becomes so polarized that you can't even have decent, clear information go out to citizens who desperately need it for one reason or another, it adds to that burden in a way that we don't necessarily recognize until it's too late.
Yeah, that's a very important point, and I'm glad that you put that in perspective for us. Michelle, in a recent column, you discussed the devastation wrought on the mental health of the country by the Trump presidency, sometimes through policy decisions, whether you think of policies of separation, policies of the wall, policies of the Muslim ban. Sometimes it's the gaslighting that we had to endure. You wrote that the crisis expresses itself in all sorts of ways, in rising rates of youth suicide, record overdoses, random acts of street violence, months-long waiting lists for children's therapists, mask meltdowns, QAnon, and some of the others that I just listed there. Is all of this stress driving our politics mad, or is it the other way around? Is the crazy politics in turn making us crazy?
I think it's a bit of an Ouroboros, right? I think that it's a bit of a vicious cycle in that the mental health crisis in this country, the fact that this is just such a grim time to be an American for almost anyone, the fact that there's so much isolation has made our politics particularly vicious. But obviously, this viciousness predates the pandemic. It predates Trump. Trump is in some ways a symptom of this as much as he is an accelerant of it. And so I think, we had a really broken polity, maybe more broken than many of us realized before 2016, and it's just continued to shatter. It's continued to fall apart, and the more it falls apart, the more people are angry, the more they're lashing out, the more they're insecure and anxious. I've talked about this with Jamie Raskin, and he very much feels like just the ambient ugliness of politics in this country, of life in this country, the sort of absence of leaders who are really able to provide people with tangible hope was, part of what led to the tragedy in his own family's life.
Yeah, and Jeff, we think of our politicians as supposed to inspire confidence, inspire hope, inspire optimism. That same University of Nebraska study I cited revealed that between Trump's 2016 election victory and his 2020 re-election campaign, psychotherapists reported a significant jump in patients reporting politics negatively affecting their mental health. As a psychologist, what do you make of this sense of hopelessness and despair that people are experiencing over politics? Have you ever seen anything like this? Because what I worry about is that people say disengage from politics, and quite honestly, this is not the time to have a disengaged citizenry with everything that is happening. We need people to be vigilant, and we need people to be engaged, not disengaged from our politics, even if it is politics of despair.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I read one of Michelle's articles, and she talks about one of the issues that people are having is that they're not able to disengage. And that seems to be a real problem for folks. And the advice we give people is to be engaged as much as possible. So now they're stuck in this fight or flight. They don't know which way to go. Their physiological systems are on overdrive, and so this is really hurting them, especially when we look at people not just opposed to Donald Trump's policies, not just Democrats, but also racial minorities and students, but racial minorities that I'm very concerned about because they've had an increase in suicide rates. So this is something that we must address.
Michael, many people had hoped that with Trump's departure from the White House, there would be an improvement of the mental state of the country. It does not seem like we have come out of that yet. Things seem to remain quite dark. Are you surprised by that? What do you think it is going to take collectively for the country to move forward from this trauma?
I'm not surprised by it, Ayman, and it has been profoundly brought home to us by the declaration of my party this past week that January 6th was a legitimate political discourse when the country knows it wasn't. So when you have such massive breakdown and dysfunction of one of the major political parties, it tends to make that recovery that much more difficult. When you have people resisting, as we've seen with the vice president, it's how many months now since January 6th? And he's just now saying Donald Trump was wrong. That has a stress on the country in so many ways. So the body politic, to Michelle's point, is off. And to get it back on course is going to take a Herculean effort by a lot of Americans who reaffirm their belief in e pluribus unum, in the very foundations of the country, regardless of the sins and the problems that we've had in the past. We've got to figure out now how to move forward together, because if we don't, we'll move forward separately, and that won't be the U.S.
And that is a very powerful reminder of what's at stake here. We're going to have to leave it at that. A very important conversation, but one that I hope sparks a conversation elsewhere. Michael Steele, Michelle Goldberg, Jeff Gardere, thank you so much for helping us have that conversation.